Hello everyone, my name is Catherine Armour and I'm the Chief Customer Officer at the UK Hydrographic Office. Thank you for taking the time to join me today. Wherever you are, I hope that you and yours are safe and well. I'm honoured to have been invited to speak as part of the Geography 2050, and I'm very grateful to the American Geographical Society, who as event organisers have not let the unprecedented events of 2020 prevent the vital dialogue and exchange of ideas that needs to happen if we are to safeguard the sustainability of our oceans and ocean communities. Today, I'm going to talk about how and why marine geospatial data is one of the most fundamental resources that we need at our disposal to help ensure safe, secure, and thriving oceans, to deliver a truly sustainable future for the blue economy. 2021 sees us entering the United Nations Decade of Ocean Science. Aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals, this means that for the UN, and indeed the world, the next decade is one where meaningful action needs to be taken that will define how we use our natural ocean resources in a sustainable way for generations to come. We have a deep relationship with our oceans, and as our history books tell us, it has been a catalyst for the economic growth that has brought us to where we are today. From sailing the oceans to discover far-off lands, to the oil that first lit our world. It highlights, though, that our relationship with the oceans is also a complex one. We're already relying on our oceans economically more than any of us realise, but we're also vulnerable to that reliance, threatened by our own actions, that very reliance. Those vulnerabilities take different forms around the globe. In the UK alone, our link with the oceans directly supports over 220,000 jobs and over 1 million more indirectly. It contributes more than 46 billion to our economy and carries more than 95% of all physical trade with other nations. But the numbers for the UK pale in comparison to the overall figures for the global economy. The livelihoods of up to 12% of the world's population, over 87 million people, depend on fisheries and agriculture. Over 3 billion people worldwide rely on food from the ocean as their primary source of protein. Against the shadow of a global population that is forecast to grow to over 9 billion by 2050, we estimate that our global ocean economy, encompassing everything from shipping to energy to sources of food, will increase in value to over 3.2 trillion by 2030. However, for far too long, there has been little thought given to ensuring that the growth is sustainable, balanced, or fair. As much as 40% of the world's oceans are heavily affected by human activities, including pollution, depleted fisheries, and degraded coastal habitats. Climate trends are placing increasing pressure on our oceans, and there are signs to suggest that the sustainability of the blue economy is in doubt, as the physical impact of climate change is set to wreak havoc on our coastal infrastructure and communities. Sea level rises are putting coastal regions and many low-lying islands at an increased risk of flooding. Coupled with shoreline erosion, this is having a drastic effect on development along our coastlines, as well as threatening the lives and livelihoods of existing communities. We also know that more extreme weather patterns are placing the lives of those living in coastal regions at significant risk. Hurricane Dorian displacing over 70,000 people in Grand Bahama and the Abaco Islands in 2019. It is predicted that we will face more frequent and more violent storms, cyclones, hurricanes, and typhoons. How do we mitigate this threat? At the same time, a rise in sea temperature of ocean waters between 1.2 and 3.2 degrees Celsius is predicted by 2100, and acidification is seriously harming marine biodiversity and making the marine environment uninhabitable for many species. We also know that the effects of all these impacts will be felt more acutely by the developing world than the richer nations. For instance, in the developing world, 60% of people obtain more than 30% of their protein supply from fish. A projected drop in catch abundance due to the impacts of climate change has huge ramifications for many millions of people. From an economic viewpoint, research from the credit ratings agency Moody's identified a long-term risk to the sovereign credit ratings of dozens of developing nations as a result of the physical damage created by rising sea levels. So, if we can't guarantee sustainability hand in hand with growth, then all we are doing is draining one of our world's most valuable economic and environmental resources and significantly harming the most vulnerable people on the planet. If we're going to rise to the challenge of managing our ocean resources sustainably, it will need purposeful leadership. Decision makers need to be equipped with the evidence and the insight to guide their choices. In short, they need timely, reliable, and actionable data to help inform decision making. And this is where we are seeing the role of marine geospatial data come into its own. At the UKHO, over our 225-year history, we've witnessed the evolution of the maritime community and the blue economy. We've seen our capability grow from not just being for mariners and the shipping industry, but a core pillar that will help safeguard the sustainability of our oceans. Providing trusted, reliable data to support the maritime industry has always been part of our core purpose. Of course, for much of our history, that data was shared through paper navigational charts. However, the digital revolution that has unfolded in recent years has been one of the most radical transformations in the depth and breadth of the data, the marine geospatial data, now at our disposal. We've seen a transformation in the way it has been gathered, giving unprecedented scale and range. We've seen new capabilities emerge as we immerse ourselves more in this data. The possibilities of what can be achieved are extraordinary. This new generation of data assets can help us to find the solutions we need to protect the marine environment and unlock the power of the blue economy. At the UKHO, we hold terabytes of data, which includes 7.5 million profiles on temperature and salinity, tens of thousands of marine mammal observations and seabed grab samples, as well as many other data sets collected by us and our partners, by ships, buoys, satellites, aeroplanes, underwater vehicles, and more. These data sets have the potential to be incredibly powerful. For example, we can use tidal data and bathymetry data depicting the seabed to identify areas likely to be impacted by sea level rises, as well as predicting the impact of storm surges and other extreme weather events. Informed decisions can then be made on how to protect communities in those locations by fully assessing the risks and the mitigation options. When we can combine the same data with other environmental data sets to support the development of habitat maps to monitor the impact of warming oceans on key marine developments and support conservation efforts. This is especially critical for coral reef systems, which are declining at an annual rate of 1 to 2% due to these pressures. Another amazing example of capabilities we see within the marine geospatial data is how satellite data is used to track environmental change. We see this in the development of a new method to monitor changes to mangroves, a tree species found in coastal areas that has significant capacity for absorbing greenhouse gases. The more we understand about the importance of coastal wetlands as carbon sinks, the more important it is that we can map, monitor, and manage these resources. Marine geospatial data can also be applied in other exciting ways that have the potential to significantly impact ocean sustainability and the ocean industries on a much wider scale. Sources of renewable energy, such as wind and tidal generation, reducing our reliance on fossil fuels. I spoke earlier of the uneven impacts of climate change between rich and poor nations, and in particular for island states and coastal communities. Marine data is not just a powerful weapon in the fight to support ocean sustainability around the globe, but also to target support and assistance to where it is most needed. As we prepare to enter the United Nations Decade of Ocean Science in just a few weeks' time, we will need different disciplines in the scientific community, amongst governments and across the global marine economy, to come together to make this happen. In short, greater collaboration, data and information sharing. Seabed 2030, a global effort to bring together all bathymetric data to produce a map of the entire ocean floor by 2030, represents an inspiring way that ocean leaders can come together internationally to support access to ocean data. Working together, we must continue to establish and promote the sharing of data surrounding the technology, legislation, and implementation of marine spatial data infrastructures, giving greater levels of empowerment to all through data-driven insights. At the UKHO, aligned with our role within the UK government, a significant portion of our thinking is dedicated to how we can expand the frontiers of marine geospatial data in order to help promote safe, secure, and prosperous oceans, including untapped blue economic opportunities. For example, through the UK government's Commonwealth Marine Economies Programme, work between the UKHO and partners such as the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, the National Oceanographic Centre, the Centre for Environment, Fisheries and Aquaculture, Science and Commercial Surveyors is helping support the sustainable blue economic development of 17 coastal nations. By bringing our data and expertise together, we can potentially unlock significant value for these participating Commonwealth states, many of which are dependent on the sustainable and safe use of the ocean environment. Through the Overseas Territories Seabed Mapping Programme, we're also working with other partner organisations to help 14 overseas territories to support shipping and to protect their marine environments. Through these programmes, we have been able to support a number of nations to use marine geospatial data in a way that will not only unlock the greater growth in their coastal economies, but empower the decision-making that will help build resilience against climate change and rising sea levels. We've worked extensively with the government of Anguilla to build a marine spatial data infrastructure to empower the government and decision-making through better understanding of their seabed. Our team worked closely with partners in Anguilla every step of the way, from the initial data capture, processing and governance, as well as training users to build up long-lasting, future-facing capabilities. With their new data portal, they could plan port developments with a far greater knowledge of seabed and ocean conditions. This paved a way for larger cruise ships to dock, and in doing so provided a significant boom to their tourism industry, an industry that underpins the local economy. The bathymetric data now readily available to planners in Anguilla also helped identify new floodplains, thus help craft strategies to protect the local population against climate change. Similarly, in Guyana, we work extensively with local partners to capture new geospatial data for the approaches to Guyana's main port, Georgetown, which will make port calls much safer and more efficient, whilst also reducing risk to key marine environments. Today's plenary session is focused on the Republic of Kiribati. We are proud of the work that the UKHO undertook with the government and our surveying partners in Kiribati. The UN has recognised Kiribati as an island state listed at risk of sea inundation due to sea level rise. For a nation of 33 islands with an average height above sea level of just 2 metres, it is hugely vulnerable. We used satellite technology to survey the seabeds of the islands and atolls that span over 3.5 million kilometres of ocean. This data was provided to the Kiribati government and is playing an important role in helping inform coastal defence planning to predict and mitigate against flooding and sea level rises. These results are encouraging, and it's amazing to see the change that's happening. But despite this, there is still a ways to go, with many coastal states subject to massive challenges, narrow resource bases depriving them of the benefits of economies of scale, high costs for energy, infrastructure, transportation, communication and servicing, long distances from export markets and import resources, low and irregular international traffic volumes, little resilience to national disasters, growing populations, high volatility of economic growth, limited opportunities for the private sector, and a proportionally large reliance on their economies on the public sector, and fragile natural environments. The list goes on. This means we have to get it right. The world is changing, and the public at large is demanding more from us for the good of vulnerable communities, habitats, and the planet. But the decisions that we need to be taken are growing ever more complex, significant, and urgent. The foundations made to date, such as the UN GGIM and the Integrated Geospatial Information Framework, need to be actively and ambitiously built upon. This can't be done with a siloed mentality. It's an issue that will affect us all over the coming years and requires joint efforts to help solve. Nor will it be easy. It's a complex framework that will involve data capture, mapping, standards, policy, governance, and training. But with access to high-quality, trusted marine geospatial data, our governments, scientists, academics, and business leaders will be equipped to make better, collective decisions about how to protect our oceans and ensure a sustainable, prosperous future for the blue economy. The stakes are high, but the opportunities are boundless. To end, I'd like to leave you with some final thoughts on the evolution of the UKHO, which I think illustrates how many of our organisations are adapting to meet the needs of the world's oceans and humanity's relationship with the sea. At the UKHO, our work looks very different to how it did over 200 years ago. From the days of hand-drawn paper charts, we're now in the age of petabytes of data stored in servers, accessible any place, anywhere, anytime, with satellite imaging, machine learning, and cutting-edge programs to process and analyse that data. From supporting ships at sea with accurate and reliable charts, we are now also supporting shore-based decision-makers with the data that they need to help safeguard the planet, balancing growth, sustainability, and equality, and giving true credence to a quote from The Economist 3 years ago that is truer than ever. The world's most valuable resource is no longer oil, but data. I believe geographers, data scientists, innovators, and technologists to be visionaries and alchemists. Just as our predecessors created charts and maps to enable discovery of the unknown, to enable the exploration of unseen horizons, so can we today provide the data and information that expands our shared horizons to provide a glimpse of the future we want. Thank you.